The wind howled through the ruined marketplace. Stalls were broken, roofs torn, and dust blew over empty crates. Daniel walked slowly, his boots pressing the cracked ground. He came here often for supplies, but today something was different. Everyone was whispering. Eyes turned to him, then shifted away. They were not whispering about him. They were whispering about her. At the far end of the street, near a half-collapsed wall, an alien woman knelt with a child in her arms. Her clothes were worn, her face pale, her long silver hair tangled with dust. She held out a small bowl, begging quietly. Nobody went near her. Traders packed up their goods when she came close. Children were pulled away from her path. It was as if she carried a curse. Daniel stopped, staring. He had heard the rumors. They called her the widow. They said her husband betrayed his people. During the war, and because of that, she was shamed forever. They said anyone who touched her would meet misfortune. People spit near her feet when she passed. She had nothing, yet they still hated her. The widow looked up and her eyes met Daniel's. For a moment he froze. There was no anger in those eyes, no madness, no curse, only tired sadness and a desperate plea to survive. Her child coughed, small ribs showing through thin skin. A merchant stepped closer to Daniel, shaking his head. "Don't look at her, she's trouble. Many have tried to help, and all failed. She will ruin you." Daniel turned away, pretending to listen. But inside, his thoughts burned. He was just a human farmer, living at the edge of the settlement. He needed help with his land, and he had been searching for someone willing to work. Every villager wanted too much pay, too much food, too much trust. Yet here was someone who had nothing. The widow stood slowly, clutching her child. She started walking away, her head lowered. The crowd parted like she carried poison. Daniel stepped forward before he could stop himself. "You," he said firmly. The widow stopped. The crowd fell silent. Everyone stared. "Come with me," Daniel continued. "I have work, food, shelter, if you want it." A sharp laugh broke from the crowd. The human has lost his mind. Hiring the cursed widow? The widow's lips trembled. She looked down at her child, then back at Daniel. "You would take me, even if they say I bring ruin?" Daniel's voice was calm, but his heart raced. "I don't care about their words. I need someone who will work hard, and you need someone who will not throw stones at you." The widow's child reached toward Daniel with a weak hand. That single gesture shattered the wall of fear between them. Daniel stepped closer, ignoring the glares around him. The merchant who had warned him hissed, "She will destroy your farm. Mark my words, human. You invite death into your home." Daniel ignored him. "What is your name?" he asked gently. The widow's voice was quiet, almost a whisper. "Karen." "Then Karen," Daniel said, "from today you work with me." Gasps spread through the market. Whispers turned into curses. Some villagers spat on the ground, others shook their heads. But Daniel did not stop. He lifted one of her worn bags and motioned for her to follow. Karen hesitated only a moment before stepping forward. Her child clung to her shoulder, eyes wide with fear but also with hope. As they walked out of the marketplace, Daniel felt the weight of every stare pressing against his back. He knew he had just crossed an invisible line. He had taken the widow. Everyone despised, and now her fate was tied to his. The sun dipped lower behind the hills. Shadows stretched across the broken stalls. Somewhere in the silence, a voice muttered like a warning carried by the wind. The human does not know what he has done. And Daniel, though he would not admit it, felt a chill pass through him. The night was quiet, but not peaceful. Daniel woke suddenly to a sound outside his wooden home. At first he thought it was just the wind moving across the dry fields. Then he heard it again. Soft footsteps, a whisper, and the cry of a child. He rose from his bed, his heart uneasy, and peered through the small window. Karen was outside. She stood barefoot in the dirt, holding her child close. Her face was pale in the moonlight, her silver hair catching the glow. She whispered words in a language Daniel did not know, almost like a prayer or a plea. The child coughed weakly, and Karen hugged him tighter. Daniel stepped outside. The cold air bit at his skin. "What are you doing out here?" he asked quietly. Karen looked at him, startled, her eyes filled with shame. "He cannot sleep," she said. "The walls, they make him afraid. He was born in camps, not in homes. Silence frightens him. He knows silence means danger." Daniel had no answer. He had never thought of silence as something dangerous. For him, silence meant rest. For her child, silence meant soldiers, fire, and screams. He nodded slowly. "Come inside. He will learn. It will take time." Karen followed, her steps heavy. Inside, Daniel gave her some bread. She broke it into small pieces, giving most of it to her child. She barely ate herself. Daniel noticed but said nothing. He saw her hands shake as she tried to calm the boy. Her strength was thin, but her will was sharp. The next day, Karen began work at the farm. She carried buckets, pulled weeds, and lifted stones. Her body moved with effort, but without complaint. Daniel watched her work longer hours than he expected. She spoke little, answering only when asked. The villagers who passed by his land glared. Some spat on the ground. One of them called out, "She will poison your fields, human. You will regret this." Karen's hands froze for a moment, then she bowed her head and continued working. Daniel clenched his fists but said nothing. Later, when she thought Daniel was not watching, Karen stumbled and almost fell. He rushed to her side. She waved him off. "I am fine," she whispered. But her face was pale, sweat dripping down her temple. That evening, while she prepared a small fire outside to cook vegetables, Karen suddenly swayed and collapsed to her knees. The child cried out, clinging to her. Daniel ran and caught her before she fell into the flames. "Karen!" he shouted, shaking her gently. Her skin was burning with fever. Her worn shirt slipped at the shoulder and Daniel froze. Scars covered her back. Not the scars of work, but deep burns and whip marks, carved into her skin long ago. He felt anger rise in him, anger at those who had done this to her, anger at a world that punished her for surviving. Karen's lips trembled as she opened her eyes. "Do not send me away," she whispered. "They will not let me live, my child. He has no one else." Daniel looked at the child, his wide, frightened eyes. He shook his head firmly. "I will not send you away. You are safe here. Both of you." Tears slid down Karen's cheeks. She tried to hide them, turning her face away. For years she had carried pain without crying. Now, in this stranger's house, her mask cracked. That night, Daniel stayed awake, sitting near the fire, watching over her and the boy. He felt the weight of the choice he had made in the marketplace. The villagers hated her. They would hate him now too. But as he listened to the child's breathing grow calmer, and as Karen finally slept without trembling, Daniel knew something deeper had begun. She was no longer just a worker on his farm. She was a burden he had chosen, and perhaps, without knowing it, someone he was meant to protect. Outside, in the shadows, unseen eyes watched the house. The whispers from the marketplace had not been lies. Someone was indeed waiting for the widow to fall, and now, Daniel had placed himself in the middle of her struggle. The storm came without warning. Rain hammered the roof, and thunder shook the walls. Daniel woke to a strange glow flashing across his room. At first he thought it was lightning, but then he heard a soft hum, steady and unnatural. He grabbed his lantern and hurried to the small room where Karen and her child slept. The bed was empty. His heart raced. He pushed the door open and stepped outside. In the downpour, Karen knelt on the ground, her body trembling. In her hands was a pendant glowing like fire trapped in crystal. Strange symbols shimmered in the rain, spinning in the air above her. Her child clung to her side, frightened but silent. "Karen!" Daniel shouted over the storm. "What is that?" she gasped, quickly hiding the pendant inside her dress. "You should not see this," she whispered. But the damage was done. Daniel had seen too much. He pulled her up, dragging her inside before the storm drowned them both. When the door closed, silence filled the house again, except for her shaking breath. "That thing," Daniel said firmly. "What is it?" Karen sat on the floor, hugging her child. Her face was pale, her hands clutching the pendant under her clothes, as if it were her last lifeline. She closed her eyes. For a long time she said nothing. Then, in a voice cracked with sorrow, she spoke. "My husband died because of this." Daniel froze. Karen continued, her eyes staring at the fire as if lost in another time. "He was no traitor, not like they say. He was a soldier, brave, loyal. But he discovered something he should never have touched. A secret hidden by the warlords. He brought this pendant to me, told me to guard it with my life. The next day, soldiers came. They accused him of betrayal. They executed him before my eyes." Her hands trembled as she pulled the pendant out, letting Daniel see it fully. The crystal pulsed softly, alive with colors that shifted like a heartbeat. They wanted this. They still want it. But they could not find it that day. So they branded me the wife of a traitor. They cursed me, spat on me, drove me out. And I ran. I ran with nothing but my son, and this. Daniel's chest tightened. He thought of the scars on her back, the fear in her eyes, the way villagers hated her without reason. Now it made sense. She carried a truth no one else dared to hold. "Why not destroy it?" Daniel asked. Karen shook her head violently. "It cannot be destroyed. It holds knowledge forbidden and powerful. My husband believed it could save lives. Others believe it can control them. If they know I still have it, they will come again." Daniel looked at the child curled against her side, too young to understand but already scarred by the world's cruelty. He clenched his fists. "Then you cannot run forever. You need someone to stand with you." Karen's eyes widened. "Why would you? I bring danger to your door. They will call you a traitor too. You will lose everything." Daniel leaned closer, his voice steady. "Because I cannot watch you fight alone. Because I do not believe in their curses. And because—" He paused, the words heavy on his tongue. "Because you and your son deserve more than this." The fire crackled, filling the silence. Karen lowered her head, tears shining on her cheeks. For years, no one had spoken to her without hatred. For years, no one had seen her as more than a widow of shame. Daniel reached out slowly, resting his hand near hers on the floor. She did not move away. But outside, thunder roared louder than before. In the shadows of the village, figures moved under the rain, cloaked and silent. The pendant's brief glow had not gone unnoticed. Karen whispered almost to herself, "They are coming." And Daniel knew her past was no longer just hers. It had become his burden too. The morning sun rose red, like fire spilling across the hills. Daniel was working in his field when he noticed shadows gathering on the road. A group of villagers was marching toward his farm, faces twisted with anger. Their voices grew louder as they came closer. "Send her out," one man shouted. "She brings curses," cried another. "Human, choose your side, her or us." Daniel dropped his tools and walked toward them. Behind him, Karen stood near the doorway, clutching her child. Fear flashed in her eyes, but she did not move. The crowd reached the edge of his land. A merchant stepped forward, the same one who had warned Daniel in the marketplace. His eyes narrowed. "We gave you a chance, human, but you ignored us. That widow will bring soldiers, raiders, and death. We will not suffer for your mistake. Cast her out now." Daniel's jaw tightened. He looked back at Karen. She lowered her gaze, already expecting rejection. The crowd had spoken these words so many times before, and she knew what always came next. But Daniel did not send her away. He stepped in front of her, his voice calm but firm. "She stays." Gasps rippled through the villagers. Some cursed, others shook their heads. The merchant spat on the ground. "Then you are a fool. When death comes, do not ask us for help." The crowd turned and left, their threats hanging in the air like storm clouds. Karen stood frozen, her hands trembling. Daniel walked back to her. She whispered, "Why? You risk everything. They will hate you now." Daniel gave a small shrug. "Let them hate. Hate doesn't plant crops. Hate doesn't feed children." For the first time, Karen's lips curved into a faint smile. It was small, but it carried more weight than any smile Daniel had ever seen. From that day, they worked side by side. Daniel taught her how to mend tools, and she showed him alien ways of growing herbs that healed faster than medicine. They shared meals, simple bread, roasted roots, and sometimes meat when the hunt was kind. The child grew stronger. His laughter filled the fields, chasing away the silence. One evening he ran to Daniel, clutching his leg. "Father," the boy whispered by mistake. His cheeks burned and he quickly hid behind Karen. Karen froze. Daniel looked at her, unsure if he should laugh or apologize. But she said nothing. Her face turned away, hiding tears she could not control. The bond between them grew, though. Both tried to deny it. Daniel felt it in the way Karen's eyes lingered when he lifted heavy stones, in the way she waited at the doorway until he returned from the fields. Karen felt it in the way Daniel shielded her from villagers, in the way he treated her child as if he were his own. But peace never lasted long. One night, dogs barked wildly. Daniel rushed outside with his lantern. At the far edge of his land, dark figures moved, strangers armed with blades and strange armor. Their eyes glowed faintly in the light, not villagers but raiders. They spoke in a tongue Daniel could not understand, but Karen's face went white with fear. She grabbed her child, clutching him close. "They are not here for food," she whispered. "They are here for me." The raiders spread out, scanning the land. One of them shouted words that Karen translated with a trembling voice. "They demand I surrender the pendant, or they will burn this farm." Daniel tightened his grip on his axe. His voice was steady. "They will have to go through me first." Karen touched his arm, her eyes desperate. "No, Daniel. You do not know their cruelty. They will kill you." Daniel looked at her, then at the boy pressed against her side. His heart burned with resolve. "I will not hand you over. Not now. Not ever." The storm that had chased her past had finally arrived at his doorstep, and Daniel knew this night would decide everything, whether the bond they had built would survive or be buried in blood. The night sky was heavy with clouds, the air sharp with the smell of smoke. Daniel woke to a sound that made his blood run cold, horses snorting, boots crushing dirt, and the metallic clink of weapons. He grabbed his axe and moved to the window. In the dim moonlight, a dozen raiders stood at the edge of his farm. Their armor was black, their faces hidden under helmets. One of them raised a torch, its fire painting the fields with red light. Behind Daniel, Karen appeared with her child in her arms. Her face went pale. She whispered a single word, filled with dread. "Them." The leader of the raiders stepped forward, shouting in a language Daniel could not understand. Karen translated, her voice trembling. "They say they know the widow hides here. They demand I come out with the pendant. If I refuse, they will kill everyone in this house." The child whimpered and hid his face against her shoulder. Daniel clenched his fists, his heart pounding. He opened the door slowly and stepped outside, axe in hand. The raiders turned toward him, torches glowing in their eyes. "I don't know what you want," Daniel said firmly, though his voice carried the weight of fear. "But this farm is mine. You won't take anything from here." The leader sneered, raising his blade. He spoke again, and Karen shouted from behind the door. "They say you are a fool, human. They will cut you down and drag me out anyway." Daniel tightened his grip on the axe. "Then let them try." The raiders surged forward. The clash was brutal. Daniel swung his axe, striking the first man who rushed at him. Another raider's blade grazed his arm, blood dripping down his sleeve. He pushed forward with sheer strength, not skill. Every strike powered by the need to protect the woman and child inside. Karen cried out his name from the doorway, her child screaming in her arms. She wanted to run to him, but fear chained her feet. The raiders circled, testing his defense. One lunged low and Daniel stumbled, pain flaring in his leg. He fell to his knees and for a moment it seemed over. Then a stone flew from behind him, striking one of the raiders in the head. Karen stood at the door, another stone in her hand, her face fierce. "Leave him!" she shouted in her alien tongue. The raiders laughed, mocking her courage. But Daniel found strength in that moment. With a roar, he swung his axe upward, catching the nearest raider across the chest. The man fell, blood soaking the dirt. But Daniel's victory came at a cost. A blade cut deep into his side. He staggered back, vision blurring. Warm blood poured down his shirt. Karen screamed. She rushed forward, pulling him back inside before the raiders could strike again. She slammed the door shut, barring it with wood, her body shaking. Daniel fell against the wall, gasping. "They will break through," Karen whispered. Tears blurred her eyes. "I should give myself up. If I go, maybe they will spare you." Daniel grabbed her wrist, his grip weak but firm. "No, don't. They won't spare anyone. They want more than you. They want power." Karen pressed her forehead against his, her tears falling onto his cheek. "Why do you fight for me, Daniel? You should have let me run. You should have let me die." Daniel forced a weak smile, his voice rough. "Because I can't. Because I care. Because you and your son are worth more than my life." Her breath caught in her throat. She had lived years being called worthless, cursed, unwanted. Now this, human bled on the floor for her, choosing death over losing her. Outside, the raiders roared and struck the door, the wood cracking under their blows. Inside, Karen clutched Daniel's hand, her heart breaking with fear and something deeper, something she had not allowed herself to feel since her husband's death. She whispered, her voice trembling but strong. "Then if you fight for me, I will fight for you." The door shook with every strike. Each slam echoed through the house like thunder. Daniel's blood dripped onto the floor, his breaths sharp and shallow. Karen pressed her child into the corner, then turned to Daniel, her eyes fierce. "They will break through soon," she whispered. Her voice trembled, but her hands were steady as she tied cloth around his wound. "I cannot let you die for me." Daniel tried to rise, but pain forced him down again. "If you go out there, Karen, they won't stop. They'll kill you, and take the boy. Don't think they'll show mercy." Her lips pressed tight. She knew he was right. The raiders wanted the pendant, not peace. Yet her heart was torn. For years she had survived only for her son. Now this human had risked everything for her, his farm, his safety, even his life. The child clutched her dress. "Mother," he whispered, "don't go." Tears burned her eyes, but she held her child close. She looked back at Daniel. His face was pale, but his gaze was steady, filled with something she had not seen in years, faith in her. The door cracked. Splinters flew as the raiders forced their way in. Karen's heart pounded. She reached into her dress and pulled out the pendant. Its glow lit the dark room, casting strange symbols across the walls. The child gasped. Daniel's eyes widened. Karen raised it high, her voice sharp. "If you want me, come. But you will not touch my son, and you will not take him from me." The raiders burst inside, their armor dripping with rain, blades raised. They froze at the sight of the glowing crystal. The leader barked an order, but none dared rush forward. They had hunted this pendant for years, but its power frightened even them. Daniel forced himself up, leaning on his axe. His voice was hoarse, but strong. "You heard her. Step forward, and you'll face us both." Karen turned to him, her eyes wide with surprise. For the first time, someone stood beside her, not out of duty, not out of fear, but out of choice. The leader growled, then lunged. In that instant, Daniel moved, striking with his axe. Karen shouted, the pendant flaring with light. A shockwave burst outward, throwing the raiders against the walls. The house trembled as if the earth itself cried out. When the glow faded, the raiders staggered to their feet, dazed. Fear replaced rage in their eyes. The leader spat on the ground, snarling. He barked a command, and the raiders retreated into the storm. Silence fell, broken only by the sound of rain. Karen dropped to her knees, the pendant slipping from her hands. She clutched Daniel's arm as he nearly collapsed beside her. "You fool," she whispered, tears falling. "You could have died." Daniel gave a weak laugh, though blood stained his lips. "Then I would have died protecting you. That's enough for me." Her chest ached at his words. She had buried her heart with her husband long ago. She had sworn never to trust again, never to feel again. Yet here was this human standing between her and death, not because of orders, not because of blood, but because he chose her. She touched his face gently, her fingers trembling. "Why? Why would you risk everything for me?" Daniel looked at her, his eyes soft even in pain. "Because I love you, Karen. I don't care about your past, your scars, or what they say. You and your son, you're my family now." Her breath caught. The words pierced through years of shame and loneliness. She wanted to deny them, to push him away, but her heart betrayed her. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she leaned forward, pressing her forehead against his. "I never thought I would hear those words again," she whispered. "But if you give me your love, then I will give you mine." The child crawled between them, wrapping his small arms around both. For the first time, he did not tremble. For the first time, he smiled without fear. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside that house something stronger had been born. Not just survival, but a bond of love that neither raiders nor curses could break. And though Daniel's wound bled and danger had not ended, Karen knew one truth. She was no longer alone. The dawn broke cold and gray. Smoke curled from the horizon where the raiders had vanished hours before. Daniel sat against the wall, pale from blood loss, his axe still at his side. Karen knelt beside him, her hands pressed to his wound, whispering words in her language. The pendant lay on the table, its glow dim now but still alive. The door creaked open. Daniel's heart tightened, fearing the raiders had returned. But it was not them. Villagers stood outside, silent and watchful. They had seen the glow from afar. They had heard the clash, the shouts, and the cries in the storm. The same merchant who had cursed Karen before stepped forward. His eyes darted between Daniel, bleeding but alive, and Karen, holding the child close. His voice was sharp. "What have you done, human? You brought war to our doorstep." Daniel struggled to stand, but Karen supported him. His voice was weak but steady. "The war was already here. You just refused to see it." The villagers murmured among themselves. Some glared, others looked away. But in their eyes, fear was no longer just for Karen. It was for the enemies she carried with her. Karen lifted her chin. Her voice, once filled with shame, now carried strength. "You all called me cursed, you spit on me, you called me worthless. Yet this human bled to protect me. Tell me, who among you would have done the same?" The crowd fell silent. The merchant's jaw tightened. He turned away, muttering, "This will not end well. The raiders will return." Daniel stepped forward, leaning on Karen for strength. "Then let them. But they will not find easy prey here. They will not find a widow alone. They will find us together." The villagers left, their whispers fading. The farm grew quiet again. Karen turned to Daniel, her eyes soft. "You spoke as if we are already one. Do you truly mean it?" Daniel smiled faintly, though pain still carved lines in his face. "I meant every word. I don't want you to be a worker anymore, Karen. I want you to be more. You, your son, my family. If you'll have me." Her lips parted in shock. For a moment she could not breathe. Then tears welled in her eyes, not of sorrow, but of something she thought she had lost forever. She pressed her forehead against his. "Then you are no longer just the man who gave me work. You are the man who gave me back my life. The child tugged at Daniel's sleeve, his small voice clear. "Father?" Daniel lifted him into his arms, wincing at the pain but refusing to let go. "Yes," he said softly. "Father?" The boy laughed, a sound that broke through the dark weight of years. Karen covered her mouth, tears streaming as she watched. The two she loved most share a bond no curse could erase. Weeks passed. Daniel's wounds healed. Karen worked the fields not as a servant, but as his partner. Together they rebuilt the farm, planting seeds of both food and hope. The villagers still whispered, but some began to watch with different eyes. They saw a woman once cursed, now smiling. They saw a human once alone, now stronger with a family beside him. At night, the three of them sat by the fire. Daniel taught the boy simple words in human tongue. Karen sang soft alien songs that made the flames dance brighter. The pendant remained hidden, its glow quiet, waiting. But within Karen, another secret began to grow, one that would soon reveal itself. She touched her stomach one evening, her heart racing. She looked at Daniel, who noticed her trembling hands. "Karen?" he asked gently. Her lips curved into a smile, tears shining in her eyes. "A new life," she whispered. "Ours." Daniel froze, then joy spread across his face, breaking into the widest smile she had ever seen. He pulled her close, holding her and the boy together. The storm of the past had ended. The threat would always linger, but they were no longer broken, no longer alone. They were family. And in that small house under the vast alien sky, a new beginning had already taken root.